Hey fam! So you were about to watch a bonus video that I filmed but obviously didn't get up in time, so now it's the Monday video. What do we expect? But we did spin the wheel on audience choice. I held a Twitter poll and the next episode will be acting and filmmaking. I'm very excited about it because this is a video that I think is going to help a lot of people that have ever thought about becoming an actor or filmmaker, mostly an actor. But it will be fun. Now on with the bonus video that's now the Monday video, yay! So I made you guys this bonus video today because I recently thought of an interesting story that a lot of my long-term Wrecked Radio fans might be interested in. And I really wanted to wear this makeup. So even if you are a Wrecked Radio fan, some of you, I'm gonna guess most of you might not know that I went through my own little news scandal. Correction, I actually was on the very outskirts, adjacent almost to the scandal, but I still got a little bit caught up in it. So some of you guys might remember my famous interviews on Wrecked Radio. I had the news show, I had my song picks, I had lists, then I also had interviews with real bands. And sometimes fake bands. The way that I usually got interviews was twofold. When I would be sitting next to band members in a venue with my Barbie doll, I usually contacted the bands and wanted to interview them myself. They had no idea who I was. I was very privileged to then get that interview, and I'm still grateful to this day. Then I had other interviews, and some of these were kind of bigger legitimate bands that couldn't get to me. But most of the time, these, what I would call satellite interviews, were bands that were starting out and hopefully were going to have some promise in the near future. I didn't ask for a whole lot. If they had available songs, if they had music videos, if they had some semblance of a growing audience, then I usually would sit down and talk with them. When you're a journalist, I should never be called a journalist. But when you are doing that kind of work, you want to be ahead of the curve. You want to be the person that puts out the first interview of this big band or gets the first piece of big news. You're the first one to report on something. You're the first one to hear a certain song. And so when the band Lights Over Paris contacted me, they seemed like they were doing pretty good. Lights Over Paris was one of my satellite interviews, and how I actually used to do these satellite interviews, and it's why I put them in quotes. Basically, I would turn on my camera, and I would stand in front of my green screen like usual, except I had my phone on speaker, and I would be talking to the band. The band was doing the same thing on the other side. They had their phone on speaker, and they'd be filming themselves, and then they would send the footage to me, and I would then make it, a video. So some of these bands I would have known for a little while, and some of them I was just hearing of, and looking at what they had already amassed, I'd either smash or pass. Are those the same thing? But Lights Over Paris seemed like they had a lot going for them. They had a very expensive music video. They had several tracks, including the one from the music video. They had models, they had set pieces, they had a gigantic tour bus, and so it seemed like they had a lot of fans. As far as their music sounded, I had this policy on Wrecked Radio that I stuck to pretty well. I myself always had my own tastes. I had my own favorite bands, and you could see that leak a lot through my news reporting. I would pick those bands. But I also didn't stray away from some of the bands that would be in the same genre, but I wasn't that excited about. As Wrecked Radio went on and I continued to report new bands and new albums that would come out, I realized that we were getting into a genre funk. You had a lot of the ringleaders, the uber successful ones that paved the way, like Fall Out Boy, Panic at the Disco, Paramore, Blink-182. They were the bands that were setting the stage for everybody else to basically imitate. Like, if there was a female-fronted band that sounded anything like Hayley Williams, which they usually did because they were singing in that genre, they might get that chance to go on tour with Paramore, or they might get that chance to just bring in some of the same audience as that very popular and famous band. But how much can money really buy? Oh my god, look at that pixelated hair. What was I thinking? Not thinking. What was I not thinking? So I started to get the first inkling that something was a little bit awry when I got comments a couple years after I had uploaded this couple of videos. I split it into two, I guess because 7 minutes is way too long for anybody to hold their attention. Believe me, I did not think YouTube was going to lean into long form as much as it did in later years. because God knows that I can't pay attention to anything more than like 2 minutes. But I started getting comments on my videos like, 2020 brought me here so fake. This interview is fake as hell too. Everyone who knew about them back then would be surprised how fake these guys are now. Yeah, I'd say so. So basically I started seeing these comments and had no idea what people were talking about, why they were saying my show was fake, obviously. I figured it had something to do with the band, and I found out that the reason why the band had that tour bus and had that big expensive music video wasn't that they were popular, but that the lead singer, the one that I talked to, was scamming banks out of millions of dollars. And looking back on the interview now, I can't say that I don't absolutely cringe at parts of it.
I'm like falling in love with you guys as I talk to you more and more. I can't help it.
But I had absolutely no idea that they weren't a real band. Did I literally just get chocolate on me? Is that chocolate or is that makeup? It's chocolate. It's chocolate. What did I eat today that was chocolate? And as the 2020 special brought me my favorite analogy that I've ever heard.
Rob had cheddar like a Cracker Barrel.
It also brought a lot of information about how basically this rock star used some scammed money. He gave false statements to the banks and false stories all around and was racking up a bill until somebody finally caught him and blew him out of the water and into a jail cell. To give a little bit more insight, this guy was throwing big parties, renting an LA type party house, like kind of like a party mansion, like some people we know. He was selling out venues of his shows, but buying 90% of the tickets and doing some really good press tour. He was hitting places like me and some other interviews that I found, and when you look up the band's name, you don't really see anything after about 7-8 years ago. And for a long time I thought about this predicament because you say to yourself, if I only had money, then I could build my own empire. Then I can do exactly what I wanted to without any restrictions. But what if you have money and you put it into all the right places that makes you seem like you're successful, but everybody can smell the non-success? When I first heard the Lights Over Paris song that was sent to me, I thought that it was a regurgitation of what we were always listening to. One of those bands that was just kind of going with the genre, copying the other one, and pulling off a very convincing genre copy. Bands are doing it all the time. They were naming themselves something obscure. They were putting on the same haircuts and the same makeup as other bands did. And they were only hoping that they were going to find a fan base that either liked very similar stuff or found them more profound than the things that had already come. And you know, lead singer Rob, if he didn't go to jail, how long would it have taken till it was all found out? Or if it was never going to be found out, if he was just going to slip into mediocrity eventually, or if it was going to be successful, if his plan would have actually worked, if he would have bypassed some of the hard days where no one was showing up to the concerts, they couldn't even give away tickets. I think it's a good lesson because I want the world to be more truthful. I want karma to exist and to be out there in the world doing its job, and the most talented people win. He called 2020 from jail to say that he was taking guitar lessons, which not all lead singers can play guitars, not even all bands can play really well, but he was trying. Late, better than never. Reason why we talked through a speakerphone as opposed to Skype is Skype and any other video chats were very laggy. I never liked to take that chance when I was talking to guests, so we just filmed our opposite sides. They sent it to me, and it was much easier to edit together something clean and crisp as a Wrecked Radio interview. It's funny because I remember getting the footage back and thinking, what's this twerp with the sunglasses on? Who does he think he is? No, that's not the main singer. But you did get a sense that this band did think a lot of themselves, even though I felt like I was introducing them to a lot of the rock world. Things are so clear in retrospect. But even reflecting back on this whole story, I kind of think about my own genuineness when I would go into an interview. Like, there were some musicians who I was legitimately in love with their music. I would be a huge fan, and I would take a lot of my questions and I would try to dig a little bit deeper when I knew the band. But there were just some bands that I was only thinking might be a big name in the genre someday, and I would just be very nice to them. I mean, it's not like I was ever mean to any of the band. Was I ever mean to any of the bands I interviewed? I don't put up with bullshit anymore. But every band I would kind of treat like royalty because I knew that somebody out there might like them and whoever's watching the video might like them too. And being older now, again, I don't think I'd be rude, but I think that if there were questions to be had, some questionable behavior, some things that seem obvious to poke fun at or to ask further about because they just don't add up, I would ask those things. Maybe I should go find a band and like interview them. Hey bands? Any bands? See how I do these days. I'd still bring the Barbie because that was just the best. But this story made me think for several years, how far can fake money, or even an inheritance like Rob was claiming that he had, like how far can it get you? How far can non-talent get you? How far can parties and knowing the right people actually get you in the entertainment industry? How many people in this industry get free passes just for knowing the right person, or for being able to pick up the bill at the end of the night? As I was putting my makeup on, I was listening to a writer's roundtable. It's Hollywood Reporter. They do actor roundtables, actress roundtables, comedian roundtables. I love them. I love getting the insight of how these people work and just talk to each other. And one of the writers mentioned the biggest piece of advice that they got from a senior writer that had helped them the most, and it was that audiences aren't stupid. They're never as stupid as you think that they are. And all of this really does give me a little bit of faith in humanity, that truly the people that are the best and who are seen at some point will get their platform. And now I think it's easier than ever. Those guys were able to just reach out to me and get an interview. And I just fluttered around like it was my job to kiss their ass as much as I needed to have a good interview and to make it go smoothly. And if I were to do interviews now, I think that a lot of the things that would change would be that I would be doing a lot more of my research, digging a lot deeper down, and asking a lot of the harder questions that nobody ever asks. One of my favorite shows, and you know what, I'll say it on here, even though I'm really not unique in saying this, but one day, I want to get on Hot Ones. I love that show. I know everybody does, but I don't like spicy food at all. I don't really care for many, maybe like a very, very, very minor like degree of spice. Maybe like a little sriracha, a little red hot in my buffalo chicken dip. But they just ask such great questions. Questions that I would feel so humbled to be asked. And that would be the eventual precipice of the kind of interviewer I'd like to be if I ever interview anyone again. I probably will. I really do like interviewing. And I thought a lot of my interviews were fun. I liked a lot of the weird questions that a lot of you guys helped write. And I love seeing the bands open up and just laugh and be very honest when I would shove my Barbie doll in their face. But yeah, if you guys want to see the full 2020 story, I will link it down below. I just thought that this would have been a nice little sequel to me talking about my first interview, which was Third Eye Blind. You could also see that down below. Ooh, I love the interview. Kind of. I was bad. He was awesome. And I love that, you know, looking at it 10 years later. Oh my god. I hope you guys have a great rest of your weekend. And I'll talk to you later. Bye.